I Love Lucy's on the TV, Elvis Presley's playing on the radio, and millions of Americans are moving into newly created suburbs.
The year is 1950, and in this episode, we're going back to the golden age of American capitalism and the baby boom to talk about how retirement has changed over the last 70 years.
We're going back to the era of the cool cat right now on Retiring Today. Welcome to Retiring Today. We often talk about how retiring has changed, but today we're going to really boil down what it looked like to retire in 1950 versus what it looks like today. So we're going to take you back to the era of the cool cat. You're a cool cat, Merkle.
Yeah, I'd go with that.
We tried to get him to dress up, think like Grease, like bomber jacket and stuff, but he wasn't going for it. So I've kind of
It's just not the wardrobe in my closet.
You just don't have that, yeah?
It's not there.
I've given sort of a wink and a nudge to a June Cleaver with the pearls, but we're gonna have a little bit of fun with what the world looked like in 1950 and what the environment for retiring in today looks like. So the cool cat next to me, of course, is Loren Merkle. He is a certified financial planner. And when we talk about 1950 and going back to 1950, of course, a lot of people remember 1950 that watch this show and that we talk to, which are pre-retirees and retirees, because that's the years they were born in. But what was kind of the environment we had for retirees there?
If we think about all the changes that have taken place in this country, not only from a retirement standpoint, but just in general, 70 years is a blip in American history, certainly the world history, but all of the changes that have taken place. And then specifically, if you're thinking about what your parents did when they retired, it's a significant different experience. My grandpa retired in the mid-'80s and he had a pension, he had Social Security and a little bit of savings. And that's just not the environment that you are going to retire into. In the 50s, the average retirement age, or I guess not the average, the mean retirement age was 68.7, so almost age 69. So the mean was people were working almost up until age 70. Social Security eligibility didn't kick in until age 65. And then life expectancy was somewhere around age 78. So if you're thinking retirement around 69, average life expectancy around 78, maybe 9 to 10 years in retirement. And most of that retirement spending was not personally funded, meaning it was funded by a corporate or private pension, and it was funded by Social Security. So it's a significantly different landscape that retirees today are facing than what we saw in the 50s.
Yeah, so we're talking about the 1950s. We know that World War II had just ended. There was a baby boom. By the mid-1950s, some 4 million babies were being born every year. There was, of course, a golden age of capitalism. People were spending money. Consumerism was really on the rise. So it was just a different time. Also, we want to compare and contrast the 1950s with today. So you did a nice job talking about longevity, only living maybe 10 years in retirement. Now people live a lot longer in retirement.
People today expect to live 20 to maybe 30 years in retirement. And most of that retirement spending is going to be based on personal savings. And a lot of people even questioned whether or not Social Security was going to be there for the retirement. But now that you're on the doorsteps of retiring or already retired, you see that it is there. So that is a benefit. But many people don't have those pensions, like my grandpa did, to help fund that. And this is why the market that we see today weighs so heavily on the mind of retirees and pre-retirees. Because people who retired in the 50s or retired in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they might have had a little money in the market, but probably not significant amounts at all. So if the market dropped by 30% in a year, yeah, it was probably interesting news, but it certainly did not impact their spendable income to support their lifestyle like it does for today's retirees.
And let's go back a little to Social Security in 1950 versus today. Back in 1950, it was more than half of retirement income.
Yeah, it certainly was. Social Security, the first legislation was introduced in 1935, so it was still a brand new program, and it really didn't start until 1940. So we're a decade into Social Security, and in that time frame, we had about 40 workers paying in for about every worker who was taking out. And in today's Social Security environment, for about every worker paying in, or for every 2 workers paying in, we have about 1 worker taking money out. So that ratio is significantly different, and therefore the ratio of which it's going to account for your spending income is significantly different. Now it represents somewhere around 30% of the average retiree's spendable income.
Yeah, the average Social Security benefits somewhere around $1,400 a month.
Yeah, the average Social Security payment today is somewhere around $1,500 a month. So if you think about it, not too many retirees today have a lifestyle of $1,400 to $1,500 a month, which is why we have to incorporate other resources to produce the retirement vision that most retirees today are looking for. The other beautiful part about Social Security is it's income for life. Meaning it's not market dependent. The income that you receive from Social Security is not going to decrease if the market drops by 40%. It's not going to increase if the market is up by 10%. So it's steady, it's predictable. You know every single month that it is going to be there. So if that predictable steady income represents a smaller portion of your overall retirement income, what that means is that now more of your retirement income is going to be variable if you don't incorporate some intentional income planning within your overall retirement strategy. Most retirees, what they really like is they like to know how much they can spend, when they're going to spend it, and when that income is going to come back, when their checking account is going to be replenished by additional income down the road. And Social Security is one of those sources that can do that. So one of the strategies that you can incorporate to help replenish or replace the amount of your lifestyle that Social Security is not going to fund, like the retirees of the 50s, is to create an income floor, where you take a piece of your investments that you've worked so hard to save and you turn that into predictable guaranteed income to help supplement the Social Security payments coming in. That's a strategy that provides a lot of comfort, a lot of confidence, a lot of certainty to retirees, especially as they're just transitioning from the working years where you know you have predictable income from your wages to the retirement years where there's a lot of question marks of where that income is going to come from.
And as we compare and contrast 1950 and 2020, I'm thinking about how much more complex retiring is today. I'm guessing in the 1950s, the job of a financial advisor or retirement planner was a lot different than it is today.
Yeah, in the 50s, there weren't a lot of retirement planners. Really in the 50s, and a lot of you probably remember this, there was a lot of stock brokers, right? So there was a stock broker. If you had a lot of discretionary income, you might call your stock broker and they might make a recommendation for you to buy a stock or to sell a stock. But from a planning standpoint, that was largely incumbent upon the retirees. But there wasn't all that much planning involved. You retire, you turn on your pension, of which they had very little pension options, right? You could take your annuity payment over the course of your life and with maybe a survivorship benefit for your spouse, and you could turn on your Social Security. Today, with Social Security alone, you have up to 81 different options to select from. In the 50s, even the 60s, they didn't have all those many options with Social Security, so the complexity was a lot less. Now that might seem scary to those of you who are on the doorsteps of retirement. Now you have all this complexity, but you can use that complexity to your advantage. If you understand how these 81 different options can work to your benefit, now you can pick and choose which of those options are going to be best for you and really maximize or grow the amount that you can use from this Social Security bucket that you've been paying into over the course of your entire working career.
We're taking a little jump back in time, looking at retiring in 1950 versus retiring today. We'll continue the conversation when Retiring Today continues.
The stock market changes. Your retirement shouldn't have to. Join us at our upcoming complimentary dinner workshop where you will discover how to maintain retirement income during a period of volatility, strategies to lower your tax bill and set yourself up for tax-free growth, low volatility investment strategies, and much more. Spots are limited due to social distancing guidelines. Register now for this complimentary dinner workshop by calling our office or visiting merkleplan.com.
Don't let the coronavirus get in your way of a successful retirement. At Merkle Retirement Planning, we are taking every precaution to ensure the comfort and safety of the families we work with. All visitors are seated 6 feet apart. Rooms are sanitized and cleaned hourly. And masks are optional but encouraged. Retirement won't quit through this pandemic, and neither will we. Schedule your visit today.
Welcome back to Retiring Today. We're going back to the 1950s, talking about what it looked like to retire in the 1950s versus retiring today. I'm here with Loren Merkle. He's a certified financial planner. Loren, in the 1950s, can you name what were some of the popular television shows?
I Love Lucy.
Very good. Remember the Honeymooners?
I don't.
I remember seeing the Honeymooners in syndication, I guess in reruns.
No.
And Leave It to Beaver.
Leave It to Beaver.
Do you kind of see my June Cleaver
I see it.
channeling today?
You're pulling it off really well.
Good. I am no June Cleaver, but those were the TV shows that were popular as we talk about the 1950s and retiring today. So things were different in the 1950s. It was a little bit simpler. One way it was simpler was that usually just one person worked, so only one person had to retire.
That's right. We had one person working, one person retiring, which decreased the amount of difficulty as far as the moving parts. Whenever we add moving parts to a scenario, it does increase the difficulty. In the 1950s, the vast majority of the workforce was men, and the majority of the people who stayed at home was women raising the kids. And that has changed significantly, where now over 90% of men are working, and I think it's almost 80% of women are in the workforce as well. So largely two working people within the household, which means that now there's a lot more complexity and moving parts to having both of them retire. Does one retire early? Does one work later? Do they both retire at the same time? If one's retiring early and getting up every morning and going to work and the other one's sleeping in, right, the dynamic that creates, there's a lot of moving parts, not only from a financial standpoint, but also an emotional standpoint, and just how does your overall living dynamic work within the family household.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people say they're going to retire first, but they want their husband to keep going to work because they want some time alone in the house.
And what we saw this year with COVID is there was a lot, with people working from home, they got a real taste, right? We call that test driving your retirement. Now you have a chance to see how it works with both of you at home for most of the time. And what we've seen is that for some of you, you really liked it. And for some of you, you decided you're going to postpone retirement, not from a financial standpoint, just because you were not ready to spend all that time together again.
Interesting test of the marriages the COVID has been. So back to 1950, people were older in the workforce. That's a little bit different than today.
It is. I mean, like I mentioned, the mean retirement age was 68.7, so almost 69 years old. Right now, only about 15% of the workforce falls within that band between 65 and 70. So most people are retiring somewhere between 60 and 65, as opposed to 65 to 70, what we saw 7 decades earlier.
Okay, in 1952, in 1950 as well, I should say, when you retired, you weren't thinking of the golden years. You weren't thinking of traveling the world maybe as much as people today, because you maybe only lived 10 more years before you passed away.
Yeah, and a lot of the positions were laborer positions. So you labor for 40 years, your body is aching, and a lot of times retirement was forced just because they couldn't do that type of work before. Whereas now, people sit behind a desk, behind a computer screen, and you can continue to do that for a while. Many people can, if desired. But the retirement that people are looking at right now, number one, travel is a lot easier now, especially worldwide travel, than what it was in the 50s. And there's a lot of other activities that we can entertain ourselves with that we just didn't have in the 50s. So quality of life is much better. Entertainment options are much better, and people are really excited to get to that time frame where they don't have to wake up and go to work every day. They can wake up and do anything they choose to do. And now the challenge is how do you finance that, right? How do you finance your retirement vision with the life savings that you've saved, that you've created over the course of your working time frame, which is something in the 50s they didn't have to deal with because very little of their retirement was dependent upon savings. It was the pensions and Social Security, as we mentioned earlier.
And isn't that the big question, really? How much am I going to spend in retirement? And I know I've heard you talk about it's not really a straight line. It's more maybe even a smiley face at the beginning. Maybe you're spending a lot, a little bit less, and then maybe a lot again. What accounts for that?
Which is also a difference compared to 7 decades ago, because when you retire and your two sources of retirement income are from guaranteed sources that are defined. Your Social Security payment was defined, you knew exactly what that was. Your pension payment was defined, you knew that's exactly what that was. That's all you had to spend. Whereas today, you have maybe this bucket of investment savings, let's call it $500,000, then you have $1,500 a month coming from Social Security, and you need $5,000 a month to live on. Well, in the first 10 years of your retirement, that's the go-go years when you have a lot of energy, you're motivated, you're excited about this freedom of time, and you want to go off and do all these things you never had time to do before. Well, it's really easy then to dip into more of that $500,000 savings than what maybe you should, or the question mark we often get is, can we, right? Can you dip into that savings earlier on into retirement with the idea in mind that after 10 years of retirement during the slow go years, when you don't have as much motivation, maybe you're not feeling as energetic, that you're not gonna need as much money to spend as what you did during the go-go years. So how do you determine what this pot of money, what this bucket of savings can really do for you in the go-go years versus the slow-go years, and then the no-go years? And the no-go years, surprisingly for a lot of retirees, is where they need to spend a lot of money, even more so than the go-go years. Because in the no-go years, this is where the long-term care expenses seem to set in, and the last expense that comes with longevity, where we may not be doing the things we want to do, but we're spending money on the things that we have to spend money on, like the health care and the long-term care.
This question came to us from Jeff in Altoona. It's part of our Ask the Advisor segment. We'll answer Jeff's questions. He asks, do I need a monthly budget in retirement? Jeff's question and much more when Retiring Today continues.
Don't let 2020 derail your retirement. Join us at our upcoming complimentary dinner workshop at Fleming's Steakhouse in West Des Moines. During this 1-hour class, you will discover strategies to lower your tax bill and set yourself up for tax-free growth, how to position yourself for investment, buying opportunities, and much more. Spots are limited due to social distancing guidelines. Register now for this complimentary dinner workshop by calling our office or visiting merkleplan.com.
Has the recent market volatility put your retirement plan to the test? See if your retirement is still on track by scheduling a retirement checkup with Loren Merkle. During this 15-minute phone call, we'll discuss if your retirement plan could be disrupted by long-term market volatility. We'll also analyze your current tax plan and provide strategies on how to take advantage of the market. Go to merkleplan.com and click Book Now to schedule your retirement checkup today.
Welcome back to Retiring Today. We're hopping back to the 1950s to compare what retirement looked like then to what retirement looks like now. I'm here with a cool cat. He's Loren Merkle, a certified financial planner. And Loren, on the silver screen back in the 1950s, do you remember? Well, you don't remember. You're not that old, but do you know?
I remember way back in the 50s.
Do you know who's on the silver screen?
Going through the drive-thrus.
Who were the big?
My hamburger.
Getting a hamburger. That's
French fries, milkshake.
For about a nickel, right? Many of you out there probably remember the 1950s and how cheap things were, obviously, compared to today. So Marlon Brando, one of the big actors of the time, Marilyn Monroe, Dean Martin, all on the silver screen in the 1950s.
Bring back the memories.
And in the 1950s, something that really kind of changed in the way that retirement looked for a lot of people was the GI Bill. Of course, World War II recently ended. A lot of soldiers came back, and the GI Bill did a lot of things to really change their lives. They could get low-cost mortgages. Healthcare was often covered for them, and education was paid for. Well, think about retiring in 2020. Those retiring today, Didn't have any of that.
No, we don't have any of that. Now we have Medicare to help us out with our retirement health care. And some people, Medicare, they go into retirement thinking that largely their health care expenses are going to be covered by Medicare. But in reality, they get a surprise and they are on the hook for a big part of their overall health care bill, depending upon some of the supplemental programs they decide to use, which adds some additional complexity because these supplemental programs, so we have Medicare Part A, we have Medicare Part B, which will cost you somewhere between $144 a month per individual this year, all the way upwards over $500 a month, depending upon what the last 2 years of your income has been. So that could be a surprise as well. If you're expecting to pay somewhere around $150 a month and the bill is $400 a month, there's a big difference. And then in addition to that is the supplemental programs, which there's changes to almost on a yearly basis, and there's some cost associated with that, whether you're paying a premium for that supplemental coverage or you have to pay more of the actual health care costs that you incur through the course of your retirement as well. So it's not anything like we saw or what the people who retired in the 50s or the 60s had to go through.
Yeah, and Medicare, so complicated that we have a team member right here at Merkle Retirement Planning. She's the director of healthcare, and she's dedicated to learning all the nuances of healthcare and helping people elect to the healthcare, talk about these premiums and these supplemental plans. And we did an episode with her. You can go to YouTube, go to Merkle Retirement Planning, and you can see the episode that we did with Anne Marie Morrow, where she talks more in depth about Medicare in your retirement. But we had this question come in for our Ask the Advisor. It's Jeff from Altoona, and Jeff wants to know, do I need a monthly budget in retirement? Lauren, what would you tell Jeff?
Jeff, you sound like a lot of people who come in and talk to us and they say, I have these I have Social Security and I've saved this in a 401k plan and an IRA. How much can I actually spend over the course of my retirement? And that's a different way of asking, do I actually have to have a budget? Because nobody really wants to have a budget. Most people for the last 10 to 15 years prior to retiring don't really have a budget, right? They're at their peak wage earning years, a lot of their debt's paid for, so they have a lot of discretionary income. And Jeff, if you want something, you probably go out and buy it without thinking too hard about it. But now in retirement, when your W-2 wages go away, you have a finite amount of resources and you also have a finite amount of time. The question is how much time is that and how long are these resources going to take you through the course of your retirement, which I think is really the bulk of the question that you're getting at. So where we need to start, Jeff, is developing what your retirement vision is. What do you want to do in retirement? How much is that going to cost you? And what we do many times to answer this question of how much can you afford to spend at point of retirement, how much can you afford to spend 10 years in retirement accounting for inflation and taxation, and how much can you afford to spend 20 and 30 years in retirement is to build that retirement plan. And we work backwards. We say, here's the resources you have, here's the longevity that we're planning for. Now, here's how much we can spend during this phase of your retirement and feel confident that you are going to be able to last the entire course of your life and not run out of time prior to running out of resources. So there is some work that's involved in that question. I guess I don't know if you need a budget or not. That's going to be dependent upon all of the different resources and your specificity within your retirement picture, but the plan will lead you the way.
Let's talk about the takeaways from today's show. So I think we've done a pretty good job of outlining how much retirement has changed, and it does seem a little more complex today, but I like your take on it, Lauren. There are more opportunities today than ever before for retirees.
Yeah, we don't have to feel bad because it's harder to iron out all of these moving parts, because if you put in the work, if you put in the effort and use some intention within your plan, then you can actually do more in retirement than what anybody was able to do or most people were able to do in the 50s. So this new age has brought a lot of new opportunities. It's gonna take a little bit more work to get there for today's retirees, but you can reap a whole lot more rewards, and by the way, you deserve it. You've worked for 40 years and you've been disciplined and you sacrificed and you put this money aside. Now it's about how to make this money work for you as opposed to working for the money.
Another takeaway, focus on creating an income floor.
You need an income floor because people want the certainty. Retirees want the certainty. You want to know that if this market blows up and you don't like what your accounts do, and your accounts go from $500,000 to $400,000, that your income lifestyle is not going to have to decrease at that same ratio. The income floor gives you the same type of certainty that the retirees of the 50s had when they had their pension income and they had their Social Security income. But now the advantage is in your favor, because you have control over how much of that floor you can create, and then you still have this excess over here that you can still use to do all these other things like the retirees in the 50s didn't have. They had that monthly income, and that's exactly what it was, or every single month for the course of their life, where now you can supplement that monthly floor, that income floor, with the other money that you saved.
And unlike the retirees of the 1950s, today you have to plan for the long haul.
You have to, because longevity is definitely here, and that's another benefit. So now instead of planning for 10 years of retiring, now you have to plan for 20 to 30, which is exciting. If we can think about working for 40 years and maybe living and having fun and not working for potentially 20 to 30 years. That sounds like a lot of fun to me.
Yeah, sounds good. Sign me up. If somebody has a question about their specific circumstance, because of course everyone's retirement vision looks different, there's a neat opportunity to spend 15 minutes talking about whatever they want to talk about.
We really enjoy these retirement checkup phone calls because they're really simple for you. All you have to do is go pick up the phone, right? Much like in the 50s.
That's right. You had to do this, right? When you did that.
I do remember those, yeah. Pick up the phone. We'll have a good conversation about what you're concerned about, things that you're thinking about, what you want to happen in your retirement, and then ways that you can accomplish that is very specific to you. So it's a very unique opportunity that you can get information that is directed specific to your situation, and it's as easy as picking up the phone.
Okay, and one other opportunity we want to tell you about quickly are our workshops. Go to merkleplan.com. You'll find out the information there on the retirement checkup calls that Loren talked about. You'll get right to the calendar of the retirement planners here at Merkle Retirement Planning. You can schedule your checkup call. The workshop information is on there as well. You can learn about the topics and times for the workshops that we're holding. Two more things we got to tell you about. We got a podcast. It's called
Retiring Today.
Same name. It's a retirement information on the go. We have a lot of fun with that. And of course, we also have our YouTube channel, Merkle Retirement Planning. And we'll continue to do this show. It's Retiring Today as well. And we thank you for watching. Cool cats.
Cool cats.
Don't let 2020 derail your retirement. Join us at our upcoming complimentary dinner workshop at Fleming Steakhouse in West Des Moines. During this 1-hour class, you will discover strategies to lower your tax bill and set yourself up for tax-free growth, how to position yourself for investment, buying opportunities, and much more. Spots are limited due to social distancing guidelines. Register now for this complimentary dinner workshop by calling our office or visiting merkleplan.com.
Don't let the coronavirus get in your way of a successful retirement. At Merkle Retirement Planning, we are taking every precaution to ensure the comfort and safety of the families we work with. All visitors are seated 6 feet apart. Rooms are sanitized and cleaned hourly. And masks are optional but encouraged. Retirement won't quit through this pandemic, and neither will we. Schedule your visit today.
From our family to yours, we hope you have a wonderful weekend.
We hope you enjoyed the show.
We'll see you next week.